Hello, hello. Welcome to the P2P Soap Box. I'm your host and P2P BFF, Marcy Maxwell. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Today, we dive into a topic that often gets overshadowed when we talk about peer-to-peer events, the emotional healing that our campaigns can provide. If you've been around the world of peer-to-peer events, you have no doubt seen this in action. A tearful celebration as someone crosses a finish line, a large team rallying behind a loved one, signs or t-shirts created in memory of someone we've lost. Our events are about so much more than just raising funds, awareness, or building community. They offer a powerful outlet for those directly affected by our causes to take action, to mourn, to celebrate, and ultimately feel less alone. However, in our attempt to create events that appeal to a broader audience and bring in more and more participants, we can sometimes lose sight of designing event experiences that truly center on those most impacted by our cause. Which is why I'm truly so excited to introduce you to today's guest, whose team is intentionally recreating their event experience with their patient community first and foremost in mind. Today, I'm joined by Chelsea Edwards, Senior Director of Peer-to-Peer Giving at the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. The Colorectal Cancer Alliance is fiercely determined to end colon and rectal cancers within our lifetime. Together with a nation of passionate allies, they advocate for prevention, magnify support, and accelerate research to stop this disease. With 15 years of peer-to-peer experience, Chelsea joined the Alliance to lead the transformation of their flagship event from the Undie Run to the Walk to End Colon Cancer. In our conversation, we'll dig into the motivations behind this change and the strategic decisions that prioritize the needs of those diagnosed with colorectal cancer and their loved ones over attracting the general public. Chelsea will also share about their new incredible mission moment experience, a moment of unsilence, and the profound emotional healing impact it's had on their community. Plus, she'll share how her team has gained buy-in for a bold new vision for this program, as well as the non-revenue benefits they are experiencing within their communities. So let's jump right in to my conversation with the Colorectal Cancer Alliance's Chelsea Edwards. Chelsea, welcome to the P2P Soap Box. So excited to have you join us.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
I am really excited to kind of dig into our topic today. But first of all, tell us a little bit about your personal and professional journey that led you to where you are today at the Colorectal Cancer Alliance.
Yeah, so my life story in a minute, right? I actually started my career in nonprofit work in college. I went to school, a journalism school, actually, because I was sure I would be the next Katie Couric, and quickly realized broadcast was maybe not a long-term plan for me. I did get up way too early. And so I switched to public relations, and through my work at school, I was a part of a group called Colleges Against Cancer through the American Cancer Society, and immediately fell in love with the idea of spreading awareness and fundraising. I've been touched by cancer personally in a lot of different ways. And so really just fell in love with the idea of giving back, and got my first job with the American Cancer Society right out of college as an income development specialist is what they were called back then, and managing Relay for Life events in the Pittsburgh area. And kind of moved up the chain at the American Cancer Society over a little over a decade, and worked as a manager and a development director. In my last few roles at the Cancer Society before coming to the Alliance were in a strategic role at global headquarters and working on operation strategy implementation, essentially making sure that the strategy that folks were coming up with in Atlanta was then translated and folks were supported in executing that in the field. And during COVID, I was kind of thinking about making a change. As many nonprofits were, the ACS was going through lots of changes. And I thought it was an opportunity for me to explore other opportunities. And so the Alliance came about, and have been with them since January of 2021, and have had quite an exciting ride in the last 3.5 years that I think we're going to dig a little deeper into today, but in kind of rebranding, reshaping their peer-to-peer strategy, our peer-to-peer strategy, I should say. And that's what kind of got me here today.
It is amazing to me how many people got into the world of nonprofit by fundraising in college. That's the same thing as me. And I think it is one of those, I think it was an unintended byproduct of all of these collegiate fundraising programs that so many nonprofits were focusing their energy on. I don't think they realized how many people they were actually driving into the industry as professionals. So, well, thank you for sharing that. And I think what you described about your time at the American Cancer Society, it seems like it set you up really well for what you're doing now at the Alliance. So as you said, so Colorectal Cancer Alliance has been on this rebranding journey over the past couple of years for its signature campaign, which used to be the Undie Run, right? Which I want you to tell us about. And it's now the Walk to End Colon Cancer. So can you tell us a little bit about what did the event used to look like when it was Undie Run? You know, what does it look like now? And kind of what went into the decision to make that's a pretty significant change. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's such an interesting transition for me personally and for the organization, because it was actually right before I was hired. The organization made this shift. They worked with a consulting company who kind of took a look at the product, and the Undie Run, I should start there. The Undie Run was a timed 5K benefiting the Alliance, where folks got boxers instead of t-shirts. It was very tongue-in-cheek, very niche, and we had a great response to it. It was a very successful campaign. But at the end of the day, what the consulting company found is that we were not getting the fundraising efforts that we'd hoped for, and that folks were not feeling the connection back to our cause. So while it was a super fun event and lots of people came, even if they weren't connected to colorectal cancer, a lot of them walked away not even realizing what they had just fundraised for or what they were running for. So the consulting company, came back with a recommendation to take away a registration fee, take away the timed 5K aspect, take away the boxers, which was a tough decision. I think we still have folks calling it the Undie Run in pockets of the country. But take those things all away, make it very straightforward, make it the Walk to End Colon Cancer, and really focus in on the fundraising. So that all happened before I was hired. I came on in January of 21. The event, the new brand was launched, I should say, in February of 2020. So you can imagine how that went with March 2020.
Oh my gosh.
We all know what happened next. So really it was a quick launch and pause for the Alliance. And then I came on about a year later. So it was kind of an interesting time. And I, was doing my 90-day assessment in my first couple of months on the job, and quickly realized that I was being told that we had a new brand, that we rebranded. But what I quickly realized was we didn't actually have a new brand. We had a new name and we had a new logo. But like I like to say, Starbucks brand isn't the green lady. It's everything you think about and that you feel when you see the green lady. And so we had to create that for the walks. Resources were low. We were still in the middle of a pandemic. So my small team of 2 walk managers and myself came together, put our heads together with our Marcom team, and we started building that brand from scratch. What we've come up with is a really different and unique and impactful, I believe, I'm biased, of course, brand for the Walk to End Colon Cancer that's all centered around the hashtag Walk Loud, and is really focused on just rejecting the silence and the stigma that often comes with the disease. Colorectal cancer is 8% of all new cancer diagnoses, but we do not see an energy around stopping this disease that matches the impact that it has. You hear so much more about other disease types that are actually much lower in terms of occurrence. And unfortunately, in young onset, colorectal cancer is on the rise. So we really wanted to create a brand and a walk experience that matched this kind of, I always say I don't want to use the word anger because I feel like it's too strong, but really a determined and a powerful, impactful experience and vibe at our walks. And we really felt like the hashtag Walk Loud captured that in the best way.
I love that. And I think one of the other interesting decisions that you made was, and it seems like an obvious one, but it is not the case at with every walk that's out there. But you made the strategic decision to say, we are designing this event for people who are diagnosed with colorectal cancer and their loved ones, not necessarily the general market. This is not a come one, come all, which maybe the Undie Run maybe kind of was, right? So talk about like, why was that your priority? What are you learning about your community? What did you learn that informed kind of your structure for the event?
Yeah. So it was interesting because I think you say, well, it should be obvious, but it's not. And it really isn't, right? I think my initial instinct in this process was, how can I create something that will bring lots of folks in? I think every cause in some way could be argued that it does impact everyone. We at the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, we talk about the risk factors and that, it could happen to anyone. And I think any cause, feels that way. But I was actually having a conversation with a former colleague of mine about the whole process and just bouncing ideas off of him. And he said, it's just a shame you went away from the Undie because I feel like that gets anybody and everybody to come. And I had this sort of light bulb moment where I said, I don't want anybody and everybody to come. We don't want this event to be designed for a come one, come all feel. We want this event to feel like a very safe space for colorectal cancer patients and their loved ones to feel like they belong and this is their place. And that was really the moment that I think I turned in terms of my strategy and how I was thinking about it. And that's really, I feel like, the beginning of the whole Walk Loud brand, and kind of our approach to how we built the walk day experience and everything around it.
Well, and I think that is also very true to the origins of so many peer-to-peer programs. I think about, Susan G. Komen and the Race for the Cure program. It started not as a fundraiser. It started as a place for women diagnosed with breast cancer and those who love them to come together and not be in the shadows or say, we don't have a place to talk about this, and to do something active together in the community. It has evolved into, a massive brand that, has evolved as well over the years. But I think that is so true to kind of the origins of peer-to-peer, which I really think is fantastic.
Yeah. And Marcy, it's interesting that you bring Komen up because that was actually one of the big examples that I used in talking about this internally to our executive team and to our internal stakeholders. I use that story because colorectal cancer is kind of in the same place now that breast cancer was back then, where it's not something people feel comfortable talking about. It's not a body part people feel comfortable talking about. And we wanted to create something like Komen did, that felt like a place where people could come together and find community and find the courage to be loud about their experience and in hopes to save lives. And so it's interesting you bring up Komen because I do feel like they really laid the groundwork for creating an experience that would allow an organization to take the stigma out of the equation.
So with the Walk Loud kind of tagline and the approach, y'all are doing something I think is really fantastic at your events for the event experience, the Moment of Unsilence, which was something I remember when you told me about it, I literally got goosebumps. So tell everybody what this Moment of Unsilence looks like. How is it impacting, participants' experience? So tell us all about it.
Yeah. So the Moment of Unsilence was a product of a brainstorming session with some staff where we talked about the silence that comes with this disease, the fact that people do not feel comfortable talking about it, and really rejecting that and saying, we're not going to be silent about this anymore. And I think it was one of our staff that said, we don't want to do a moment of silence. We want to to be unsilent, and everyone kind of, everyone's eyes glistened because we just felt it. When something is really right, you just feel it immediately, and that's really what it was with the moment of unsilence. So essentially, the moment of unsilence is exactly what it sounds like. It is the opposite of a moment of silence. We lead our survivors first in a moment to let out every emotion, every feeling, every emotion of anger, of victory, of defeat. It's really supposed to capture the same moments as scream therapy. If anyone's heard of scream therapy, we've used that a lot as kind of the example of what it should look and feel like. And so we lead our survivors in a moment where they are to scream and let out all of those emotions and feel safe doing that. And then we invite everyone who's been impacted, because as we all know, with any disease, it's not just the patient that's impacted, it's the people that love them. And so we lead the entire crowd in a moment of unsilence. And it is, when it goes well, man, it is one of the most impactful emotional moments that you could possibly imagine. We've had lots of just really cool stories that have come out of it. I remember being in Seattle 2 years ago, and kind of just watching the crowd. And I watched a woman who looked like she was about my age. I'm in my late 30s, with her 2 small kids, beautiful husband, like beautiful little family, walk up to the survivor tent. And they handed her her t-shirt and her medal, and she just broke down. And God love this woman. She could not get it together. I watched her for several minutes just try so hard to take a breath, and she just couldn't. It took her quite a while to kind of collect herself. And we were in a phase there, we were very early on in the new brand, that we were still trying to capture these moments and use to be used in media and in training and all of that. And so I watched her and I thought, she has to be, photographs have to be taken of her when she's doing the moment of unsilence. I just know that it's going to be a really therapeutic moment for her. So I grabbed the photographer and I said, here's what we're looking for. We really want to capture this moment. I really think that this woman's going to have a good experience during that. And I'd like for you to focus in on her. So he did, and he got some amazing photos. And I grabbed her after the walk and I said, hey, I just want you to know, I noticed you. We got some pictures of you. And I just want you to know, I'm so glad that you're here. And she shared her story. Turns out she is a Broadway actress, former Broadway actress. She played Mary Poppins in the traveling Broadway show. So of course, it makes sense that she was so emotive and so beautiful. And she told me that she had never done anything in her survivorship before that day. She had just finished treatment about a month before the walk. And she really just didn't feel like, she could or should do anything with small children and all of that. And then when the walk came to Seattle, this was its first year, she felt like, this could be the moment for her to come and do something. And she said, this is everything I didn't know I needed. And I told her that we captured her in the moment of unsilence, and we've actually, stayed in touch with her, and we've used pictures of her in our media moving forward. And she's still one of our biggest supporters. But that moment and watching her kind of let that all out, and she stood next to one of our chairs who is just an incredible person and has her own incredible story in her own right. And the picture of the two of them standing next to each other, both young moms, and both have been through the ringer. It was a really powerful moment. And it was one of those moments that I thought, okay, we did the right thing here. We took this in the right direction, and felt super valid. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Cleveland, and it was not supposed to rain. We moved the event from October to August for better weather. It was a beautiful morning until everyone got there, and then the rain came, as it does in Cleveland every now and again. But it was a really cool moment because as our survivor speaker, another young survivor was sharing his incredible story. The rain just kept getting harder and harder and harder. And then it came time for the moment of unsilence. And as we were getting ready to lead that survivor group in a scream, the rain, you ever hear it just rains loud? That rain came down, and it was like Mother Nature wanted to join in. It was a really kind of incredible moment. So it was like the first time I ever experienced, and my most recent experience with the moment of unsilence. It always looks a little bit different, but it really creates the most powerful, impactful moments for these survivors and for the people that love them. And we're just so happy with it. And we think it's just going to get better and better each year.
again with the goosebumps. I love it so much because I think what often gets lost in our peer-to-peer events is the emotional healing that can take place by the coming together, by the taking action, by, again, feeling not alone. Again, even for not just those who've been diagnosed, but their caregivers who feel like I'm in this and I'm in this maybe by myself. That I think sometimes that gets lost or it gets secondary to the hopeful stories that we do want to talk about that are really important because that's the end game, right? That's the goal of the fundraising is to have happy outcomes, but it's ignoring the journey to the happy outcome. Even if there's a cure, right, down the road, it does not mean it will not come with hard days and sadness and anger and everything that goes into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the important thing about the Moment of Unsilence that we've kind of found through the process is that the yelling and the screaming isn't always anger. It's not always sadness. Sometimes it's victory, right? We used to say when we were trying to kind of explain the vibe we were looking for is that, that feeling after you watch the hype video of your favorite sports team and you feel like you could run through a brick wall. That's the feeling that we want people to have when they come to the walk. They want to feel like they could move mountains for this cause because they have so much energy around it. And so I think the Moment of Silence has done that. So sometimes it's not letting out anger and sometimes it's not letting out sadness. Sometimes it's just letting out the I did it. I survived this or I'm going to, right? And it's really leaving folks with that kind of renewed energy around whatever it is that they're wherever they are in their journey, it's giving them that energy.
So this is a bold change, right, for the organization. And, it can't go understated how, you're creating an emotional moment for people, right? You're creating this safe network, this safe place for people to feel a lot of feelings. And sometimes it's hard enough to train new staff or train staff on just executing the event logistically the way you want them to, or the way you want it to from a branding standpoint. So now putting this kind of creation of an emotional moment into, the hands of your staff, right? How did you gain buy-in from them? How did you kind of train them and get them on board with this idea?
Yeah, it's a process. And I think we're always thinking about how we can do it better and how it can be simpler and how it can be easier and better to understand. I think, one of the blessings and curses of having a small but mighty team is that we've got a small team. So we're very tight knit and we've gotten to be very in line in how we're thinking about things. And so I think that in a lot of ways, that's been a benefit to us because we are all very much in the same mindset and just understand. And we haven't had to really, I guess, fight an uphill battle when it comes to training in that sense. I will say at the very beginning of our process, as we were working through this and as my team became very passionate about this kind of walk loud type vibe, our Marcom counterparts, some of the other folks in the organization, they definitely had doubts about this taking it this direction. Like you said, it's a bold move. We oftentimes hear that we want things to be hopeful and happy and light. And it's really not necessarily the direction that we've taken the walk. While we do have those moments, it's really not the overall vibe. And so we really had to work hard to gain buy-in from our volunteer leaders, and not even gain buy-in, but validate the direction that we wanted to go and the feeling that we had about this. And so we talked to tons of our volunteer leaders, some that were very attached to the Undie brand. And so it helped that we were able to get their buy-in early on about, their process, their journey with colorectal cancer, how they wanted that to be reflected in the walks, how they were going to get the most possible out of these walk experiences. And it was super validating. I mean, everything they said was exactly in line with the direction we were going. And I think being able to share that and have that kind of volunteer support from the beginning, it helped us with our internal stakeholders as well. And I think it helped us, it's helped us with our staff too. So, in them talking with volunteers and with folks that have been impacted by this disease, and getting that feeling that we're trying to create just by hearing their stories, it's made it very easy to say, okay, now we want to recreate that in this moment. And we want to give people an opportunity to feel those feelings right now. And so it's really been about getting the buy-in from those key volunteers and those key stakeholders kind of from the beginning. And it's been easier because we're just following their lead. This is what they want. And it's interesting because about a year later, we were a year into the brand. We had a donor study that really wasn't focused on peer-to-peer. It was just a donor-wide study. And when the company that did the study for us brought back their results, I was like, where were you a year ago when I was trying to convince people this is what we need to do with the walk? Because it was 100% in line. I mean, there were folks saying that they felt angry. They felt like they didn't have a place where they could be safe in having their feelings. They wanted to feel empowered to do something about it, but they didn't feel like they had the courage to do it. And they needed that. And, that was everything they were looking for from the Alliance, from in terms of support and from how they activated as donors and fundraisers for us. So that was a super validating experience to get that feedback and go, okay, see, we were right. We got it anecdotally from our volunteer leaders, but to hear it in a more official study really, really helped our cause as we moved things forward too.
Oh, that's so validating.
Yes, it was
totally gotta love it.
Yes.
So at the new brand has been in place for a couple of years now. Talk about some of the results. So, I mean, obviously, I know there's revenue results, participation results, but what else have you seen as an organization coming out of this change?
Yeah. So there are the boring but exciting numbers. We saw 76% growth in revenue in 2022, which a lot of folks across the industry saw big growth that year. We were coming back out of COVID. Things were bouncing back for sure. We also saw 37% growth in participants that year. So that was something that was super exciting. And we saw the more exciting number, I think, is last year when we know the industry across the board was about 3% growth. We saw 26% growth in our revenue and another 30 to 40% growth in participants. So folks are responding. I think those numbers speak volumes about the brand and people coming back. And as we kind of grow this event, we're seeing huge growth in our participant numbers and our team numbers as we build. And we're really still working with the foundation. We have so many ideas and so many things that we know we can do better and more. And we're just looking to, really hit the ground running when it comes to that growth. But we're already seeing really promising numbers in those first couple of years. In terms of the anecdotal stuff, I think the stories I told about the Moment of Unsilence are huge. I think also we have gained tons of hospital system partners and local sponsors that I think we have not had engagement with as an organization before. Seattle, I think, is a big victory story for us, success story for us. We had really no engagement as an organization in Seattle before, and we brought them on as a walk. We added Seattle to our list in 2022. And we've got every major cancer center in Seattle is a major sponsor for us. We've got engagement with them. We've got volunteers sitting on cancer boards out there now. And it all started with one volunteer that insisted we should have a walk in Seattle. She had been traveling down to Portland for that walk. And she said, we have enough people. We've got the energy. We can do it. And so that has been really cool to watch. And we've got lots of cities that have seen substantial growth since we rebranded. And just new folks coming into the fold. We have a lot more of our young onset community that I think this brand speaks to, for sure. Us millennials, we're always looking to move a mountain and make some change. And so I think that the brand really speaks to that. And we've got a lot of really great new volunteers in that vein. We had a volunteer who came to us. His name is Micah from Cleveland. And he is a stage 4 patient survivor, has been through so much, but an email he sent us recently, I think, speaks a lot to this brand and what the impact that it's had. He was the largest fundraiser, of course. He had 100 team members the last 2 years. And like I said, had been through so much, but has tons of support. And both he and his brother sent emails after the event saying that really this event has been a gift because in a time where they've really got no control, this has given them control. This has given them a purpose. This has given Micah's family and friends a way to support him when, as we know, in these situations, a lot of times there's not a lot you can do. You've got to trust the doctors and the medical professionals, but this is a way that they can show their love and support. And Micah sent just such a beautiful email to our staff team after the event this year. And he ended with, you all are the straw that stirs the drink. And for that, we are thankful. And that is a sentence I think that will stick with me for a while. And I'm happy to continue to be the straw that stirs this drink and create experiences for people that helps them find healing, helps them find purpose, and a little bit of control in a time that is totally out of control. And I think our brand's doing that.
I have no doubt. And I can imagine there are people listening that are thinking that you're making them kind of rethink their events and how they approach things and what else they could be doing. So if we have people who are listening and they're thinking, this is amazing, I want to experience this for myself, or my family has been impacted by colon cancer, where can we send people if they want to get more involved?
Yeah, colorectalcancer.org. And you can go to the walk page, find a walk near you, and get involved. We also have, amazing DIY fundraisers and other opportunities across the country. But we are really looking to create this experience for all of our fundraisers. And we'd love to see everybody come to a walk and scream with us during the Moment of Unsilence.
I love it. Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing all of this. It just brings me back to the whole point of why we do peer-to-peer in the first place. And so I just love that you shared this with us. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to share. And if anybody needs us, colorectalcancer.org.
The P2P Soap Box is produced in partnership with True Story FM. Engineering by Pete Wright. Music this week is by A Teller. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we hope you'll consider doing just that for our show. But the best thing that you can do to support the P2P Soap Box is simply to share the show with a friend or colleague. Thank you for listening.